I knew something was off the second I saw the damn box. Cardboard, sealed, sitting dead center on my desk like a smug little landmine. No return address, just a white sticker with my name typed in all caps, Ashley, like it was shouting at me. The kind of packaging HR uses when they're sending out congrats on 10 years, mugs, or layoff kits. Except this wasn't HR, this was personal. And there he was, leaning just a little too casually against the copier, arms crossed, sipping his green juice like he invented the concept of breathing. Braden, the intern, correction, the CEO's son, a walking LinkedIn post in tight pants. He flashed that crooked teeth of privilege trademark smile and said, "Open it, you've earned it. Now I've worked here 12 years. I've survived 4 mergers, 2 reorgs, 1 office flood, and a CFO who faked a coma to dodge an audit. But this was new. We don't do presents. Not for people like me, operations managers. We're the ones who keep the lights on and the crap flowing smoothly so all the VPs can prance around ideating on whiteboards. If I ever get a gift, it's usually a recycled Starbucks card from an intern I once helped print PDFs. And even then, it's got like $1.83 on it. But this box, this was not from an intern. This was about an intern. And before I go any further, seriously, if you're enjoying the story, do me a solid. Hit that subscribe button and give it a like. Not because I need the validation, okay, maybe a little, but because it keeps this chaos-fueled channel running. Otherwise, I'm just a middle-aged woman yelling into the void while eating cold string cheese at 2 a.m. Anyway, Braden's eyes were on me, but not in that normal look. I'm trying to flirt, but I was raised on Reddit way. No, this was calculated. His foot bounced. He was waiting for something, a reaction, a mistake. The office was already in full Friday mode. Someone was singing happy birthday off-key in the break room. Marketing was gossiping around the donut table, and my inbox was a graveyard of flagged emails no one would ever respond to. But this moment with this box, everything felt like it had slowed down. I stared at it, then at him. Something in me went still. I didn't touch it. Instead, I pulled out my phone, snapped a photo, and forwarded it to Internal Audit. Subject line, unsolicited package protocol, CC'd compliance and legal just to cover my bases. Then I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and made myself a mug of stale Keurig coffee like it was any other Friday. My hands were steady. My heart, not so much. When I returned 5 minutes later, the box was still there, but Braden was gone. His desk chair spun slowly like a ghost had just clocked out. 10 minutes later, Audit arrived, quiet, no smiles. One of them wore gloves. They picked up the box and nodded at me once, no questions, no ceremony, just left with it. At first, the office didn't notice. But then it got too quiet. Phones stopped ringing. Even the Slack notifications died off like the system had gone mute. From my desk, I watched through the glass walls of Conference Room B as the audit team opened the box. I saw the way one of them immediately leaned in, then stiffened. They didn't call me in. They didn't have to. Something was in there, something serious. I could feel it, not just paperwork, not just a gotcha. This was more than office politics. This was career-level sabotage, and it had my name on it. The next person to speak to me wasn't audit, it was IT. They froze my workstation temporarily, they said, for precautionary reasons. Nothing to worry about, just standard protocol, right? I've been through enough precautionary freezes to know when I'm being put under a microscope. But I didn't panic. I didn't argue. I just logged out, calmly stood up, and asked one question. Can I get a copy of the incident report log? The IT guy blinked like he hadn't prepared for me to ask him anything. I'll have to check with compliance. I nodded. Good, because you're going to want to check the access logs. Someone's been in my files, and with that I sat down and waited, because I wasn't just being framed. I was being targeted. I didn't open the box. I didn't even flinch. When you've been in corporate long enough, you learn the golden rule. When something smells like trouble, you don't poke it, you escalate it. And this reeked worse than the office fridge after Carl from sales forgot his tuna quinoa bowl over Memorial Day weekend. So I picked up my phone, angled the camera just right to capture the label, the seal, and a sliver of that smug bastard smirk in the background, and I emailed it. To Internal Audit at CompanyCom CC, Compliance at General Counsel at Subject, Unsolicited Package Protocol. Body, found this sealed box on my desk this morning. No prior notice. Label just says Ashley. Requesting procedural guidance before handling. I even included the timestamp photo. Learned that trick back during the envelope incident of 19, when a VP tried to claim they'd never seen a whistleblower complaint that mysteriously ended up shredded. Braden chuckled as I hit send, like I'd just missed the punchline. It's just a joke, he said, grinning like someone who's never had to worry about job security a day in his life. Lighten up, it's Recognition Friday? I didn't even respond, just turned back to my desk, logged off my terminal and waited, calmly, like I hadn't just potentially sidestepped a landmine with my name on it. The clock ticked slow. I answered a few unrelated emails, booked a facilities inspection for next week, approved 2 vacation requests. The world kept turning until 10 minutes later when it didn't. 3 members of audit walked in. No announcement, no greetings, just brisk footsteps and silent nods. One of them, a woman I'd only seen in passing during quarterly reviews, wore latex gloves. Actual gloves. That detail hit like a cold slap. Gloves meant chain of custody. Gloves meant evidence. They walked straight to my desk. I stood and stepped aside like I'd rehearsed it. The gloved one gently lifted the box like it might explode or bleed. No one said a word. "Do you want to ask me anything?" I offered, voice steady, rehearsed. "No, thank you, Ashley," one replied. "We'll take it from here." I nodded. They left. The box went with them. It took exactly 7 minutes for the silence to creep in. At first, it was background noise, the kind you don't notice until it stops. The humming of printers, the ding of Slack messages, the clink of ceramic mugs against the kitchenette counter. But then I realized the noise had gone dead. Phones weren't ringing, chairs weren't creaking. Even the one guy who always plays TikToks on speaker had gone mute. A low-grade hush had spread like fog. People noticed. A few heads popped up like nervous meerkats. Conversations hushed. Across the office, I caught my boss Doug giving me that tight, anxious nod managers give when they think they're supposed to look supportive but really want to bolt for HR. I watched through the smoked glass of conference room B. The audit team had set the box down on the table. They opened it slowly, one flap at a time, like disarming a bomb. The gloved woman pulled something out, a file folder. Another reached for a tablet. The third typed something into a laptop. Then all three froze. That's when I knew. Whatever was in that box wasn't a joke. It wasn't a meme or a parody award or some HR initiative gone sideways. It was something dangerous. Someone in audit pressed a button on their phone. Within 2 minutes, IT walked into the room. Not to join the meeting, but to head straight to my desk. "Hey, Ashley," said Ben from IT, who I've known since he got hired straight out of community college and still called HDMI ports the square ones. His voice was weirdly formal. "We're going to need to freeze your terminal temporarily." "Just precautionary." I stood, of course. "Am I being investigated?" He fidgeted, "Not sure, it's just protocol." "Then please make sure compliance gets me the incident report and the access log to my user folder." He blinked. Yeah, I'll let them know." I grabbed my notebook, slid my chair back, and moved calmly to the edge of the office. No drama, no panic, just control. Quiet, deadly control. Because here's the thing, you don't seal a box like that unless you want it found. You don't label it with my name unless you want to create a direct link. And you definitely don't deliver it on Recognition Friday unless you want it to look like a reward turned scandal. Which means someone wanted to take me down. The only mistake they made, they forgot who I am. They didn't escort me out, which told me one thing, they weren't sure yet. If audit had walked in with HR, I'd be halfway to the parking lot clutching a branded folder and a whisper of, "We'll be in touch." But instead, they isolated my desk. IT froze my workstation. Compliance had started circling, not with badges of authority, but with that tight-lipped politeness that smells like gasoline under a velvet glove. "Please stay in your office," one of them said. I smiled, of course. My pleasure. I'd seen this play before. Hell, I'd written the playbook they were now flipping through like they invented it. Don't underestimate operations. We're the ones who quietly close the loopholes after someone like Braden drives a bulldozer through protocol. And now I was the one being frozen out? Cute. I leaned back in my chair, watching the room watch me. The energy had shifted. People weren't just quiet, they were suspicious. You could feel the rumors being microwaved across the cubicles. She must have done something. Maybe she opened something she shouldn't have. I heard she's been here too long anyway. The wolves always sniff around the wounded. But I wasn't bleeding, I was waiting. It took about 20 minutes before someone with actual authority showed up. Senior Compliance Officer Mallory Grant. Smart woman. Calculated, deliberate. The kind who will let you talk just long enough to build your own gallows, then measure your neck for rope. She stepped into my cube like she owned the air I was breathing. "Ashley, we're collecting statements. We'd like yours now." I nodded, of course. "I'd also like access to my own incident logs, badge entry data, file access timestamps, and any session logins from the last 5 days. She raised an eyebrow. "That's not typically shared during a preliminary review." "Sure," I said with a smile. "But I suspect we're already beyond preliminary." She paused. Her silence was an answer. They were spooked. Not enough to call legal into the room, but enough to know this wasn't going to be some quick oopsie review and sweep. That box had bite. I leaned over and opened my planner. I'd logged my hours manually all week. One of those habits you pick up when its system randomly resets clock-ins during routine maintenance. Cross-referencing with my badge swipes, I knew I'd left the building at 5:42 p.m. on Wednesday. But when I finally saw the access log compliance had printed, it said I'd logged into the NDA database at 2:08 a.m. Thursday. Which was interesting, considering I was at home, asleep, while my badge was allegedly unlocking doors I didn't even have clearance for at that hour. My heart didn't race. My palms didn't sweat. I simply tilted my head and read the log again, slower this time, like I was reading the first line of a riddle. The file accessed was labeled NDA Client C3 Final PDF. That one mattered. Big time. That client had recently re-upped their contract with us. The NDA was still in pre-signature status. If it leaked, if it was mishandled, even viewed outside proper authorization, it'd mean liability stacked tall enough to crush someone's career. Mine, apparently. Who printed this log? I asked. Mallory blinked. One of our team. Why? I pointed to the timestamp and the device ID logged under remote terminal access. It was flagged as OP Room C Term 04. I knew that terminal. Everyone did. It was the ancient, barely functioning station in the training room. You had to jiggle the monitor cord just to get it to boot. And more importantly, no one used it unless they were avoiding detection. I tapped the line with my pen. I'd like camera footage from that room, between 1:45 a.m. and 2:15 a.m. Thursday. Mallory hesitated. We haven't pulled camera footage yet. I arched a brow. Then maybe start there. She didn't write that down, but she also didn't argue. They thought I was going to panic, break down, beg, but I wasn't playing defense. I was watching their offense crumble, because someone didn't just make a mistake. They tried to forge digital fingerprints with a thumb too fat to fit the gloves. They left smudges. And if I was right, that sealed box wasn't just a trap. It was a confession in cardboard. Payroll never calls you unless something's broken, missing, or about to make your weekend miserable. So when my cell buzzed just after 11 a.m., caller ID, M. Jameson payroll, my stomach did a tiny nosedive. I stepped out into the stairwell, the only place in this entire building not bugged by some overly ambitious intern trying to prove they're revamping company culture with open-air micromanagement. Hey, Ashley, sorry to bother you, Marlene said, voice low like she was afraid even the drywall had ears. Quick question. Did you authorize a file access at 2:08 a.m. on Wednesday morning? My blood ran cold. Come again? I asked, already pulling up my planner with one hand and unlocking the internal access portal with the other. A file was downloaded from the NDA archive. The timestamp pinged payroll because it auto-generated a staging report tied to onboarding compensation. The report popped up in our logs this morning. Weird thing is, your user ID's on it. I wasn't here, I said, flat. Wasn't even awake. There was a pause on the other end. Yeah, she said slowly, I figured. That's why I'm calling you directly. Thought it smelled funny. Marlene was a lifer, 10 years in payroll, 5 in HR before that. The kind of woman who keeps receipts in triplicate and always pretends not to notice office affairs unless she's the one holding the final paperwork. Don't report it up yet, I told her. Let me check something first. Got it. This call didn't happen, she whispered and hung up. Back in my cube, I tunneled into the building's badge access logs. It took some maneuvering. I'd been locked out of most high-level folders thanks to the ongoing inquiry, but I still had my offline backup from the previous month. And unless Braden was suddenly 10 times smarter than his haircut suggested, he hadn't thought to scrub those. I cross-referenced badge swipes for my ID against the building's entrance log. According to the system, Ashley Thompson entered the building at 1:52 a.m. Wednesday night and exited at 2:39 a.m. Except I didn't. My apartment complex has security footage of me arriving home at 6:17 p.m. Tuesday night. I have a timestamped Grubhub receipt for pad thai at 7:04. And my dumb orange cat, Darrell, woke me up at 3:12 a.m. Wednesday by knocking a candle off the windowsill. I remember because I yelled at him and stared at the ceiling for an hour wondering why my life was built out of crumbling IKEA furniture and corporate landmines. So unless I astral projected into the office and decided to break into an NDA archive folder from a terminal in training room C, someone cloned my badge. The icing on the paranoia cake? I tried to pull security camera footage for that time frame, training room, hallway, main entrance. All 3 files were unavailable. System error. Archive corrupted. Scheduled maintenance. 3 different errors, all for the same night. Cute. That's when the simmering started. Not rage, not yet, but the slow, boiling a closed lid kind of anger. The kind that starts behind your ribs and crawls up your spine like a fire that doesn't want attention, it wants results. This wasn't just someone trying to frame me. This was someone with internal access. Someone who knew how to manipulate badge IDs. Someone who understood file routing, payroll cross-checks, and most importantly, timing. They picked 2:08 a.m. for reason. Low server traffic. Automated tasks run at 3. Most logs would roll over by then. It was just smart enough to work and just dumb enough to miss my paper trail. And who in this building had enough surface-level understanding of our systems to try something like this, but not enough depth to cover their tracks? Someone who asked too many questions about how things get archived. Someone who conveniently hung around the IT department last week learning the ropes. Someone who brought me a sealed box on a Friday morning and watched me like a hawk waiting for it to blow up in my face. Braden, the intern, the CEO's son. The idiot with just enough inherited power to believe he was bulletproof. But now he had a problem, because I'd spent 12 years getting to know every inch of this company, and I had just started turning those inches into a noose. The moment I started connecting the dots, the rage wasn't loud, it was surgical. Not the kind that sends plates flying across kitchens or makes you sob into your steering wheel. No, this was the kind of rage that slips into your bloodstream like cold mercury. You don't cry, you calculate, because now you've got something more important than feelings. You've got clarity. I sat in that half-frozen cubicle, the beige walls closing in like a padded cell, and started thinking backwards. The way Braden had hovered by my desk all week, pretending to shadow me for his little internship recap report. How he kept asking about legacy systems, which is just spoiled corporate speak for things older than I am that I don't want to learn but need to blame later. How does the file archiving actually work? Who decides when an NDA is final? Is the system smart enough to detect unauthorized downloads? At the time, I thought he was just lazy. One of those fast-talking, soft-palmed toddlers in khakis who treat questions like performance art. But no, he wasn't lazy. He was probing. Every question was surgical, targeted, masked as curiosity but loaded with intent. He didn't care about operations. He wanted access just enough to replicate my behavior. Clone the pattern, then detonate it. I opened my email, pulled up a draft, and created a new folder on my personal cloud titled Braden Trail. I wasn't sending this to HR, not yet. HR would fold faster than a gas station lawn chair the second Braden dropped his last name. No, I needed the kind of insurance that speaks in legal clauses and CCs the board. I scrolled through my archived audit logs. As a creature of habit and trauma, I've kept monthly exports since 2017. Not company policy, just personal paranoia. The kind you grow when your last boss tried to blame a finance discrepancy on your poor folder structure. Inside the January folder, I found a log that made my jaw clench. It was from 3 weeks ago. A user session initiated from OP Room C Term 04. Yes, that crusty terminal in Training Room C. Timestamp 3:17 p.m. The user was tagged as guest Intern89. Braden, he didn't even bother hiding it, and guess what file he accessed? C3 NDA Draft DV4 Internal Docx, same document, same client. But the kicker? That file was marked restricted/internal even then. A guest intern should never have had access to it. I opened another archive, March. Braden's name showed up 6 times across various badge logs, all piggybacking off administrative workstations while shadowing department heads. Always briefly. Never longer than 6 minutes. Just enough to plug in a flash drive, just enough to copy, just enough to learn. This wasn't some oopsie. This wasn't a confused new hire who clicked the wrong folder. This was premeditated. I checked our office delivery logs next. The courier who delivered that box to my desk Friday morning wasn't listed. No internal mail routing. No third-party signature confirmation. And yet, the box was there, perfectly sealed, labeled with my name. Planted. By someone who wanted to frame me for unauthorized possession of client-sensitive material. By someone who knew my role put me 2 keystrokes away from every confidential file in this company, but who also knew that I knew how to cover my tracks. Braden needed a scapegoat. He chose me, bad call. Because what he didn't know, couldn't have known, was that this company has lived and breathed through me for over a decade. Every broken process I duct-taped back together. Every contract I reviewed after hours. Every time I saved a VP's ass from their own incompetence without getting a whisper of credit. Now some punk in dad's loafers wanted to pin his failure on me? I smiled, actually smiled. Not the fake kind you wear in meetings. The kind that happens when the storm inside you finds direction. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was about precision. I opened a blank document and typed one line at the top. Intentional sabotage internal escalation dossier. Then I began compiling. Screen captures of badge discrepancies. Archive logs with conflicting access data. Screenshots of Slack messages from Braden asking about data protocols. Notes from the previous week when he lingered by IT asking out of curiosity how VPN Ruth worked. Every breadcrumb, every slip-up, every little digital fingerprint he left while trying to plant mine. Not for HR, not for my boss, not for department head who'd quietly ask me to let this blow over. No, I was building this for the only people that mattered now. Legal, compliance, the board, and when it was time I wouldn't say a word, I'd just press play. I didn't go to my boss, I didn't loop in HR. I walked straight to the one office where words are weapons and timing is everything, General Counsel. I knocked twice, not timid, just firm enough to say, this isn't a check-in. Cynthia Devlin looked up from a pile of contracts with that tired, lawyerly stare that says she's 2 depositions away from snapping a pen in half. But when she saw me, something shifted. Maybe it was the look in my eyes. Maybe it was the manila folder I held like it was radioactive. Got a minute? I asked. She nodded, closed the door. I handed her the folder, labeled plainly, C3 NDA chain anomaly. Inside were hard copies of every log discrepancy, a full timeline of access anomalies, and 3 screenshots that showed Braden's user activity from the terminal in Training Room C. But the centerpiece, the real meat, was the printed image of the contents found in the sealed box, the folder labeled Client C3 NDA with 4 unsigned drafts and a single envelope marked internal use only. Cynthia skimmed it. Her face didn't twitch. When she got to the page with Braden's access timestamp and the badge clone overlay, she reached for her reading glasses. By the time she hit page 6, she said only one thing. How long have you known? Since the moment he asked me how file routing worked, I said. The box just confirmed it. She leaned back, laced her fingers together. You're sure this was planted? It was never processed by mailroom. No delivery log, no courier signature. It just appeared on my desk. Timestamped the morning after someone accessed the NDA database from a guest terminal using a cloned version of my badge. She nodded slowly, then said the one thing I was waiting to hear. Okay, no dramatics, no panic. Just that single syllable that means I believe you and now I'm handling it. I'd done my part. Cynthia stood, walked to her file cabinet, and pulled out a separate folder, thicker, labeled with a red sticker that simply said C3 high risk. You know what this client means to us? She asked, flipping it open. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. C3 was the client, the whale, the name no one ever says too loudly in meetings. They don't just bring money, they bring access, government contracts, international compliance. If that NDA, even in draft form, had been leaked, even appeared to be mishandled, we'd be crucified. Legally, financially, reputationally. We're talking full breach liability. Cynthia said, Clause 17 would trigger. They could walk and take everything. And someone wanted to pin that on me, I said. No, she corrected gently. Someone wanted to destroy you so they could bury the breach without consequence. She didn't say Braden's name. She didn't have to. I didn't need a confession. I had evidence. Cynthia closed the folder, locked it in her cabinet, then walked over to her desk and picked up the phone. I'm calling in legal ops, she said, and I'll need compliance in room 4 and 30. I'll handle it from here. As I turned to leave, she stopped me. The CEO will be notified, but we're not telling him everything yet. Not until we're ready. I paused at the door. Why not? Because she said he's not going to like what we found, and if he finds out too early, he might try to shield the intern. We don't want that. Do you think he knows? She looked at me for a long beat. I think he doesn't want to know. Not yet, but that changes today. That's when I felt it, not victory, not relief, but quiet clarity, like the last fog of doubt had finally burned off. The storm wasn't coming anymore, it was already here. And this time I was the one steering. I didn't wait for audit to finish their song and dance. I already knew the chorus. We're reviewing internal procedures, we can't speculate, we're looking into possible causes. Translated. We're terrified this leads to someone untouchable, so we're stalling. I had no patience for that. I wanted proof, not policy memos. So I did what I've always done when people get cagey. I followed the paper trail myself, starting with the thing that was supposedly delivered to me, the box. If it had come through internal mail, it would have been logged, scanned, and timestamped with delivery route tags. We have a whole system, color-coded, even. HR sends yellow tags. Finance uses blue. Operations gets green. That box had none of them, so I went to the mailroom. Paul, the grizzled man who runs it, was in the back sharpening box cutters like a prison librarian. I showed him a picture of the box on my desk and asked a simple question. Did this come through you? He snorted. We don't seal boxes like that. That's third-party packaging. Looks like something from Apex Logistics. Apex, of course. Off-brand courier service our interns use when they're trying to look entrepreneurial but can't afford FedEx. I pulled up our vendor logs and there it was, buried in the daily deliveries. An entry timestamped Thursday at 5:07 p.m. Apex Logistics drop-off. No internal routing, no receiving staff signature. But there was a line for recipient confirmation. Signed by A. Thompson misspelled. My name is Thompson. No E. I requested the originals. Paul faxed it over. Looked like my signature, almost. A few letters off, loopy in all the wrong ways. Someone had tried to copy my style and flubbed it. Sloppy, brazen, and now documented. I printed the receipt, highlighted the error, scanned the whole thing and dropped it into a new folder in my encrypted cloud drive labeled Premeditation Courier Fraud. Then I did the one thing that guaranteed this wouldn't get buried. I put together a flash drive. Not just digital files, narrative. A full chain of events. The forged signature on the Apex slip, the delivery timestamp matching Braden's badge access, the cloned login session at 2:08 a.m., the exact file trail leading to the folder labeled Client C3 NDA, the missing security footage from that night, and finally, the snapshot of the intern's workstation IP routing traffic through Terminal C, cross-checked with the training room's router logs. All packaged, all labeled, all indisputable. Then I encrypted the drive and dropped it, no message, no warning, into the inbox of Cynthia Devlin, General Counsel. Subject line, in case I'm not invited to the next meeting. No exclamation mark, no threat, just inevitability, because I knew what was happening behind the scenes. Cynthia was building her own case now, parallel to mine. Legal had gone quiet, which means serious gears were turning. When legal stops talking, that's when the real decisions start getting made. The CEO hadn't been briefed fully yet, but he would be, soon, and when he was, he'd have to choose between his son and the company, because audit now had proof of premeditation. Not just incompetence, not just poor judgment, but an orchestrated attempt to frame a long-term employee for a data breach so severe it could tank our most important client relationship. There was no more benefit of the doubt. This was a takedown attempt. Only problem, they forgot to take down the woman who documents everything. So now I waited not with fear but with precision. Calm, cold, prepared. Because whatever came next, I wasn't walking into it empty-handed. I was walking in with receipts. They tried to make it look like I didn't belong there. The invite came at 6:42 a.m. Subject line, Leadership Alignment Urgent Compliance Review, with names CC'd like a corporate who's who. General Counsel. HR Director, Head of Compliance. CTO, and at the bottom, like a rotten cherry, Braden Ellis. Intern, my name, not on the tube, but it was there. Buried under the line, CC'd, not as a stakeholder, not as a participant, as a formality. Nice try. At 9 o'clock sharp, I walked into conference room 4 wearing the same navy blazer I wore the day I signed my full-time offer, 12 years ago, back when we still had paper ID badges and free vending machine coffee. Cynthia Devlin met my eyes, nodded once, then gestured toward the open seat at the far end of the table. I took it without asking. Braden sat directly across from me, grinning like he'd already won a prize nobody else knew about. His hair was perfect. His shirt was untucked just enough to say I'm casual but important. And the way he tapped his stupid pen against the table told me exactly what he thought this meeting was: a formality, a wrap-up. A clean sweep under the rug before Daddy whisked him into some other department where he could mess up without fingerprints. The CEO strolled in last. Cuffed jeans, expensive watch. Looked like he just rolled off a tech stage where he gave a talk about disrupting middle management. His expression said everything: annoyed, not with the situation, with the inconvenience. Let's keep this tight, he said, dropping into his chair like gravity personally offended him. I've got a board call at 10. Cynthia didn't even look up. She opened her folder and spoke to the head of audit. Proceed. The room stilled. The blinds were already drawn. Phones silenced. HR sat tight-lipped with their legal pad ready, one side for CYA, the other for casualties. Audit began. First, the timestamps, each badge entry, each terminal login, the terminal in training room C. The 2:08 a.m. session tied to my user ID but initiated from a location I couldn't possibly have accessed. Then the courier tracking. How the box never entered through official channels. How the delivery slip bore a forged version of my name, misspelled. With an extra E, they moved methodically. No inflection, just data, just sequence. When they reached the falsified badge log, the head of compliance cleared his throat. We cross-referenced the cloned ID session with MAC addresses in the terminal logs. The badge authentication was mimicked, but the session originated from a device manually logged in under an intern tier credential, username eBraden1. Then came the line, delivered like a blade between the ribs. This delivery was initiated from intern account, eBraden1 on Thursday, 3:41 p.m. The room froze. The silence wasn't loud, it was surgical. No one moved, not a twitch, not a pen tap. Just the soft hum of the AC system and the high-pitched whine of an ego deflating across the table. Braden blinked once. Just once. His smirk faltered for exactly half a second before he recovered, leaning back in his chair like he'd just been accused of stealing office snacks. I mean, maybe I was testing a process. You said interns were supposed to learn operational systems, right? He offered, tone light, eyes flicking to his father for rescue. The CEO didn't speak, didn't even look at him. He was staring at the audit file in front of him, jaw tight, lips pinched. The man had been handed a landmine, and it had his last name on it. That's when Cynthia slid the second folder forward. Not to HR, not to audit, to him. Inside was a full printout of the courier's falsified receipt, the badge clone report, and the screen capture of Braden's session from training room C, mouse trail, login keystrokes, and all. You understand what this means for client C3, correct? She asked the CEO flatly. Still, he said nothing. The HR director looked to Cynthia. Next steps, we're not there yet, she said. Without turning her head, she finally looked at me. Miss Thompson, do you have anything you wish to add? I didn't move for a moment. Then I opened my bag, pulled out a small object, and slid it across the table. A flash drive, black, no label. Cynthia picked it up wordlessly. Braden opened his mouth, but I beat him to it. Before anyone asks, I said calmly, that contains everything. Full log exports, terminal metadata. Screen recording of him accessing the badge control console from the training room. He copied my badge ID and scheduled the box drop after he accessed the NDA folder. The CEO finally looked up, not at me, at his son, and that look, it wasn't disappointment, it was recognition. The kind of look a man gives when he realizes he raised a saboteur and handed him a key to the vault. Braden tried again. Look, I didn't mean for stop talking, Cynthia said. This time she didn't call for a vote. She looked directly at HR. Effective immediately, Mr. Braden Ellis's internship is terminated. We will be notifying the board. All remaining devices and credentials are to be surrendered before he leaves the premises. Braden gaped. The CEO leaned forward, face gray. I'll handle the handoff. It was over. The smirk was gone. The boy wonder had been dethroned, not with rage, not with shouting, just facts, sequence, cold execution. I didn't smile, didn't flinch, didn't lean into the gloat because I wasn't there to gloat, I was there to close. The flash drive clicked against the glass table like a judge's gavel. No ceremony, no build-up, just that quiet plastic thunk that said, game's over. I didn't elaborate, didn't stand, didn't raise my voice or look for nods of validation. I just said the words I'd rehearsed silently for days. Before you ask, it's everything. The access logs, metadata, and a screen recording of him editing the badge database from a terminal marked Training Room C. Cynthia Devlin reached for it like it was a live grenade because she knew that's exactly what it was. The kind of evidence that doesn't require context, just viewing. She plugged it into the secure laptop in front of her. The room leaned forward slightly. No one made a sound, not even Braden. The video launched automatically. Screen lit up with the familiar pale blue interface of the internal security portal. Every badge ID, every door, every terminal, and there it was, my user ID being duplicated. The mouse moving with certainty, not hesitation. Someone who'd practiced. The system accepted the clone. Timestamp, Wednesday 1:47 a.m. Then the terminal switched to internal file storage. C3 NDA draft DV4 internal docx opened. Scrolled through. Copied. Final screen and order confirmation on Apex Logistics. Delivery scheduled. Recipient, Ashley Thompson. No E. Braden's face changed. Just barely, his jaw tightened. His fingers curled into fists against the armrests, but he didn't speak. He couldn't. The evidence was too complete, too clean. Across the table, the HR director turned to legal. Do you have confirmation of client risk? Legal counsel nodded, face unreadable. Yes. Had this box been opened by Miss Thompson, the company would have been liable for unauthorized possession of pre-execution NDAs tied to client C3. That would have triggered breach protocol. At best, we lose the contract. At worst, full review by external regulators. The CEO leaned back in his chair, rubbing the space between his eyes with two fingers. Not angry, not confused, just tired. Like the weight of a very stupid mistake had finally landed right on his chest. He didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, he sighed. That was it, not a defense, not even an apology. Just a sigh from a man who realized that his own kid had almost cost him everything, and worse, that the company had been saved not by him, not by leadership, but by the person they'd all overlooked for a decade. HR turned to Braden. Effective immediately, she said. Voice sharp as glass, your internship is terminated. Security will escort you to retrieve your belongings. You are not to re-enter the premises without legal authorization, and the board will be notified. Braden stood slowly, like his limbs had forgotten how to move without someone giving permission. No protest, no argument, just stunned, slack-jawed silence, like he hadn't even considered this was a possible outcome. He looked at me once. Just once. And what he saw wasn't smugness, wasn't gloating, just cold, detached execution. Because when you've been underestimated for 12 years straight, your victories don't look like fireworks, they look like consequences. Cynthia closed her laptop. Ashley, thank you, you may go. I stood, didn't shake hands, didn't linger. I walked around the table, past the CEO, past Braden, past every tight-lipped face that had once looked at me as nothing more than background noise. And just before I reached the door, I turned back to the table. Reached for the one thing still sitting there like a ghost of a failed setup. The sealed box, unopened, untouched, still marked with my name. I picked it up carefully, held it against my side like a purse. Then I looked at Cynthia, at legal, at HR. I'll be needing a new desk nameplate, I said, and walked out. Not promoted, not paraded, just recognized, finally. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.